But with his methods, there's 3 pillars, and that is cold, breath, and power of the mind. So most of his work is all about basically taking control over the body on your own. And by doing that, you use breathing and cold exposure and basically your own mental capacity as a tool to kind of help alleviate your burdens and basically any pains or sufferings you might be dealing with. The main thing he talks about in the book that he actually he talks about, I feel like first is cold exposure, and how he actually has a chapter titled "Cold Shower a Day Keeps the Doctor Away." And there's been studies before about cold exposure and stuff like that with people, and there's been a lot of positive benefits to it. And his stuff kind of falls in line with a lot of those studies, and how when you get into the cold, it allows your muscles and your vascular system and your circulatory system to basically constrict, just like if you were trying to exercise, you're constricting the muscle. And just as in the sense of when you take a hot shower in the sauna, it helps open everything up and loosens everything. The cold exposure does quite the opposite. And because of that, it allows all the vascular muscles throughout your body to actually constrict and to close up and strengthen themselves over time, because it's a natural response for your body to deal with the cold temperatures, is to do the constriction of the muscles in the vascular system. So by doing this, it basically allows your heart and your circulatory system to become stronger and more versatile to, I guess, cold temperatures and extremes. But it allows your body to basically take out that stress and alleviate some of it, because your body's dealing with stress already from the cold, so it kind of prepares your body to deal with it more. And there's been studies on that before, but it's what's the right word? I think it's hormetic stress. And it's basically stress that you put upon yourself, just a little amount of stress, nothing crazy, but it's enough to get your body in a certain state of like a fight or flight, and get a certain physical response chemically that basically allows your body to become more resilient. It's kind of the same thing with cold exposure and just taking ice baths in general. I mean, that's where he goes with it. But even doing saunas in extreme heat, or even just exercising and running or weightlifting or anything like that, it's like putting stresses onto your physical body, and by doing that, it gives you a mental effect in the sense of dealing with whatever physical stress. I know that there's times when I haven't weightlifted in a long time and I go do a good workout or something, I do feel mentally lighter. And it's kind of like that, where it's like doing these things and putting your body through these burdens kind of allows you to be more prepared. Even Joe Rogan kind of talks about that or he has in his podcast, where he talks about how at times he doesn't feel any external stress from work or anything like that necessarily, because he knows that the most stressful and difficult things he's done throughout his day, or that day in general, is stuff he's chose to do to himself, like getting in the sauna and which I love the sauna. I wish I could use one more often, but sitting in the sauna at almost 200 degrees for 20 minutes physically a lot harder to deal with, and at one point is a mental challenge just to force yourself to do it, than dealing with any form of outside stress in other forms. So it kind of allows you to be more adaptive to those stress markers and make it easier for your body to handle. But he talks about doing the cold exposure every day. It can help strengthen your vascular system and your overall health, and because of it, it will help bring down your overall heart rate, which in general can have a major effect on your overall health and stress levels. The lower heart rate you have, the less stress on the body, and that's been proven in many ways, and it's also why a hummingbird never lives as long as an elephant. An elephant's heart rate is very slow in comparison, where a hummingbird's heart rate beats almost 200 beats a minute. An elephant's, I think, is nowhere close, and they live 1,000 times longer in comparison. And so it kind of shows ways like that, and just how someone that's completely overweight and has a resting heart rate of 60 or higher is not going to necessarily have the best health or a longer life than someone that's an extreme athlete and has a resting heart rate of 40. So it just depends on the person and what you're trying to do. But that's his first, or that's not his first pillar, but that's one of the 3 pillars of the Wim Hof Method. The second one is to breathe. Breathing kind of allows you to connect with yourself again, and it kind of becomes a form of meditation with how he does it. It's not necessarily his intent. It's not the same as doing a regular meditation, but it's basically taking in big deep breaths and filling your lungs and belly and chest, and just letting it go over and over again continuously for multiple rounds. And then after you do that for so many breaths, you exhale. And when you exhale, because your body is so full of oxygen from taking these deep breaths, and because of it, you've exhaled more, extracted more carbon dioxide from your bloodstream, it allows you to hold your breath for longer. I need to start doing the Wim Hof Method on a daily basis. I have done it before. I have done the breathing, and I have just the other day, I was able to hold my breath for about 2 minutes and 6 seconds. I've been able to do longer before, but that's what I was able to do the other day. But basically, by doing those breathing techniques, it allows you to basically put another form of stress on your body, which is lack of oxygen. And although you don't necessarily feel pain, or you're not necessarily in any real risk, it allows your body to handle that stress, and because you're forcing it consciously and you're being conscious of what you're doing, when typically you breathe just automatically. You can breathe, I think it was like 24,000 breaths a day or something crazy. And when you start to do that consciously, it kind of connects you with your body in a different way. And it's very similar to what regular meditation is, in the sense of focusing on the breath and the mind, and just being in the moment and feeling the breath, and that being the focus of your mind. It doesn't allow you to necessarily trail in thought and do this and that. This doesn't necessarily focus on that. He does have other little breathing methods or techniques to do this, but it is quite amazing what you do. But basically, you do the breathing like that, and do the exhale, and then without oxygen for however long, and then retention breath, and you do that for several rounds before finishing. But that's the main extent of it. But you can use it for about anything. He actually goes over different ways to optimize your breathing for different situations throughout the book, and he talks about how you can use it for endurance, and you can use it for exercise and mental health and dealing with stress, and how it can help with illness, because it also helps lower your overall inflammation in the body, which I'll kind of get to later. He's been involved in several studies that have kind of helped prove some of these. So this isn't all just statements stated by some hippie from the Netherlands that breathes and meditates every day. That he's been involved in multiple studies in multiple major universities in the United States and the Netherlands and a bunch of other places. And all of basically everything he's stated kind of adds up in some way or another. And there just seems to be more and more studies coming out to kind of help prove his census. But basically the accumulation of the excess oxygen in the body allows it to do so much more, in the sense of when doing athletic performances, and when he talks about using it for endurance, it basically fills your body with more oxygen and allows it to produce more ATP, which is the chemical compound that allows our bodies to produce energy and actually do and exert our bodies in some physical form or another. And so he talks about how you can just, by breathing more when exercising, it can allow you to do more, and how it just allows your body to basically take out the lactic acid, because doing that breathing and getting more oxygen in the body makes it more alkaline and less acidic, and it allows your body to perform at a higher standard, or not a higher standard necessarily, but more optimally than if you didn't. So he talks about doing some of the breathing techniques and just busting out push-ups when you have no oxygen in your lungs without breathing, and doing so many push-ups that you might not have been able to do typically. So there is a lot in this book on the different ways he uses the breath, and it's quite amazing. And the testimonials from people and the people that have been dealing with disease, and how all this has basically help them deal with different issues. But he talks about breathing for exercise, breathing to adjust to altitude, extending your retention time. He's used it for about any purpose you probably could, and the sense of just thinking about it. He talks about using it for endurance and athletic performance and just a bunch of crazy stuff. And it does all kind of add up in the way he breaks it down, and how breathing is probably one of the most important things that you can do as a person, in the sense of without it, we aren't here. Life is not here without breath. And the first thing we do in life is breathe. So he kind of connects that all in also a spiritual way, in the sense that breathing is life, and without it, we're not here. And that basically being more connected to your breathing can allow you to perform better. But another reason why it's so good, and especially in combination with the cold exposure, is both of these have been proven to lower inflammation levels in the body. And because of that helps with many illnesses and other things. But the third pillar of the Wim Hof Method is power of the mind. So he talks about using the mind to kind of be consistent, and I guess understanding that you have more control over yourself and your natural abilities through the control of your mind than you would actually expect. He's been a part of a couple studies that kind of help point towards this direction, and stuff like that. But it it is kind of amazing some of the stuff he talks about, but it makes sense. Mindset is a lot in a lot of ways. Self-talk has a big way in how you look at yourself and everything else around you, that it makes a lot of sense. You got to have the right mindset going into things to necessarily look at it more optimistically and positively to kind of build into something. And without necessarily good mindset, it's not going to necessarily be as effective. So it definitely has some merit to that in some way or another.